Hello, this is A News. I'm James Azimoha. Let's see your headlines. US President Donald Trump extends pause on strikes against Iranian energy plants. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Saudi Arabia as Kyiv offers drone defense help in Middle East. And former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro appears in New York court as judge refuses to dismiss criminal charges against him. Thank you for joining us. US President Donald Trump has announced a pause in attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure on Thursday as diplomatic efforts continue. The move comes amid ongoing negotiations and rising tensions across the region. Here's the latest report.
US President Donald Trump said he is pausing attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure for 10 days, adding that negotiations with Tehran are progressing well. Speaking at a cabinet meeting, Trump said the pause followed what he described as a request from Iran, while noting that discussions remain ongoing. He also pointed to what he called a goodwill gesture, saying Iran allowed 10 oil tankers to transit the Strait of Hormuz during talks.
They said to show you the fact that we're real and solid and we're there. We're going to let you have 8 boats of oil, 8 boats, 8 big boats of oil. This was 2 days ago. And they'll sail up tomorrow. That was 3 days ago. And I didn't think much about it. And then I watched the news, and they said, a very good anchor, actually. Happened to be Fox. But I watched it, and he said, something's unusual happening. There are 8 boats that are going right up the middle of the Hormuz Strait. 8 big tankers are going loaded up with oil right through. And I said, well, I guess they were right, and they were real. And I think they were Pakistani flagged. Yes. And I said, well, I guess we're dealing with the right people. And actually, they then apologized for something they said, and they said, we're going to send 2 more boats.
Trump said the development indicated a level of engagement between the two sides, while warning that Tehran must reach an agreement or face continued pressure. Meanwhile, Iran has submitted its formal response to a US-proposed 15-point ceasefire plan through intermediaries and is awaiting Washington's reply, according to Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency. The response was delivered via mediating countries, as indirect contacts between the two sides continue, including message exchanges facilitated by Pakistan. Trump has also warned that Iran must get serious in negotiations after Tehran rejected an earlier version of the proposal. Despite the diplomatic exchanges, hostilities have continued across the region. Air raid sirens sounded across Tel Aviv early Friday, as Israeli authorities warned of incoming threats following multiple waves of Iranian missile strikes targeting cities including Tel Aviv and Haifa.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says the Strait of Hormuz is closed and warned that any ships attempting to pass through could face harsh measures, according to Iranian media. The state media also reported that shipping linked to what it described as allies and supporters of the United States and Israel is prohibited. Separately, media reports say 3 container ships of different nationalities were turned back after warnings from the IRGC Navy. US President Donald Trump has criticized NATO during a cabinet meeting, questioning the alliance's support for Washington's war efforts in the Middle East. He also criticized members for failing to meet defense spending commitments.
So thank you to the incredible members of my cabinet. They're doing a phenomenal job. One thing, we're very disappointed, I'll say it publicly, we're very disappointed with NATO because NATO has done absolutely nothing. And I've always said, 25 years ago, I mean, I was somebody that wasn't a politician, but I was always involved in politics and I understood politics. I said 25 years ago that NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours. And I want you to remember that we said this. They didn't come to our rescue. Now they all want to help. When they're annihilated, the other side is annihilated, they said, we'd love to send ships. They actually made a statement, a couple of them, that we want to get involved when the war is over. No, it's supposed to get involved when the war's beginning, or even before it begins, including us. You know why?
Cross-border strikes between Israel and Hezbollah are intensifying, with Israel moving towards creating a buffer zone inside southern Lebanon. Here's more on the story.
Tensions are escalating along the Israel-Lebanon border. Missiles were fired from Lebanon towards northern Israel just after midnight on Friday, with Israeli defense systems intercepting several. Authorities report no casualties from the latest barrage. In Beirut's southern suburbs, an airstrike involving 3 missiles struck a building overnight, with explosions heard and smoke rising across the area. Meanwhile, in southern Lebanon, the Israeli military says 2 soldiers were killed during clashes with Hezbollah forces along the border. Israel has announced plans to establish a buffer zone south of the Litani River, aiming to push Hezbollah further from its border. Troops have moved into the area, building fortifications and demolishing homes in evacuated villages. Defense Minister Israel Katz says the military will maintain control of key crossings and the security zone as long as threats persist. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu describes the operation as an expansion of an existing security strip to protect northern communities. Hezbollah has warned it will resist any long-term presence, calling the plan an existential threat to Lebanon.
The U.S. Treasury is planning a major change to American banknotes, with President Donald Trump's signature set to appear on the new paper currency. It would mark the first time a sitting U.S. president's signature appears on banknotes, breaking a tradition that dates back more than 160 years.
US paper currency will carry President Donald Trump's signature starting this summer, marking a shift in how federal notes are issued. The update will also remove the US Treasurer's signature, ending a practice that has been in place for more than 160 years. The first $100 bills with Trump's signature, alongside Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, are due to be printed in June, with other denominations to follow. Officials say it could take several weeks for the new notes to enter circulation. Existing bills signed by Janet Yellen and Treasurer Lynn Malerba will remain in use during the transition. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the change reflects the significance of the 250th anniversary, pointing to economic growth and financial stability during Trump's second term. An effort to introduce a $1 Trump coin has been set back by US law, which bars living individuals from appearing on coins. Authorities say the overall design of the currency will remain unchanged, with only the signature being updated.
Ukraine is stepping up its outreach to Middle East as President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Saudi Arabia for talks on security cooperation. Zelensky says important meetings are planned as Kyiv seeks closer ties with regional partners. Ukraine is offering air defense and battle-tested drone interceptor technology known for being low-cost and effective, while seeking financial and technological support in return. Ukraine experts teams are already working with partners in Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. The visit comes as Ukraine faces a potential new Russian offensive amid stalled peace talks. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Russia remains focused on its war in Ukraine rather than providing significant support to Iran. Rubio also addressed President Donald Trump's criticisms of NATO, saying it reflects concerns that U.S. support for allies is not always reciprocated.
Speaking of Russia's support for Iran now, What's your assessment? I think Russia's primarily concentrating on the war they have going on right now.
Do you think President Trump criticizing NATO this morning, that sentiment?
I think he just made an observation, and the observation is that the United States is constantly being asked to help in a war, and we have more than any other country in the world, on a war that's happening in another continent, in Ukraine. But when the U.S. had a need, he didn't get proper positive responses. So right now he's just making the observation that, I think it was a couple of the leaders in Europe who said that this was not Europe's war. Well, Ukraine is not America's war, and yet we've contributed more to that fight than any other country in the world. So,
the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development are warning of a sharp slowdown as households and businesses in the United Kingdom face increasing strain. This follows rising energy prices and global trade disruptions. Our correspondent Zainab Farzada has more.
The UK economy is expected to be among the hardest hit by the ongoing Middle East conflict, according to new analysis by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It warns that rising energy prices and disruption to global trade are already pushing inflation higher and slowing growth. Following the war in Iran, Britain is seen as particularly vulnerable because of its reliance on imported fuel and international markets. The OECD says the UK is likely to face a sharp economic slowdown than other major economies, with weaker business investment and a fragile jobs market already adding pressure before the conflict escalated. Across Europe, countries such as France, Germany, and Italy are expected to see a more limited impact, as they are less exposed to rising energy costs. The organization warns that the longer the conflict continues, the greater the risk to economic stability, with higher energy prices pushing up costs for businesses and households. Oil prices have surged, rising from around $60 a barrel in January to close to $100. The spike has been driven in part by disruption to the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping route for a fifth of the world's oil supply. The OECD says the American economy is likely to grow faster than expected, supported by stronger demand for U.S. oil and lower import tariffs. Also, the U.S. economy is expected to remain relatively resilient. Rising fuel costs are set to hit household incomes and business profits, a pattern also seen in countries including the UK, Turkey, Brazil, and Mexico. In Westminster, the government says it is working to strengthen the economy and protect households, but with no clear end to the conflict, analysts warn the risk remain firmly to the downside. The OECD has downgraded UK growth to just 0.7% this year, down from previous forecasts compared with 1.3% growth last year. Jennifer Sata, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
A federal judge in New York has said he will not dismiss criminal charges against Venezuela's former president, Nicolas Maduro, over a dispute over legal fees. Here's more on the story.
A court hearing on Venezuela's former president Nicolas Maduro has taken place in New York. During the one-hour hearing, the U.S. federal judge Alvin Hellerstein said the case against Nicolas Maduro will proceed, rejecting defense arguments that U.S. sanctions are blocking his choice of legal representation. The dispute centers on whether Venezuelan state funds can be used for his defense, with his lawyers saying he lacks the means to pay, while prosecutors argue the restrictions are justified under sanctions and national security concerns. Hellerstein also questioned whether alternative funding options exist and said he will issue a separate ruling on the matter. Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, have pleaded not guilty to drug trafficking and related charges and remain in custody awaiting trial. In court, Maduro followed proceedings through a translator, took notes, and appeared calmer than at earlier hearings. His lawyer also dismissed reports that Maduro has claimed he was kidnapped, saying such accounts should not be relied upon. Meanwhile, supporters gathered in Caracas calling for his release, as Donald Trump said additional cases could be brought against him. The case is set to continue, with a key ruling on the funding dispute expected in the coming weeks.
When we return, Ukraine is no longer just asking for help. It's now exporting security. We'll look at these historic defense pacts signed today in Jeddah and what it means for global balance of power. Stay with us.
Well, hello and welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
Welcome back to A News. The war in Ukraine has taken an unexpected turn today as President Zelensky lands in Saudi Arabia to sign a landmark defense cooperation agreement. This move signals a major pivot for Kyiv, evolving from a nation in need of aid into a strategic partner for the Gulf's most powerful monarchy. To break down the implications of this new alliance, we're joined now by Yulia O'Connell, member of Dignitas New York, USA. Thank you for joining us, Yulia.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, President Zelensky described this new agreement as a foundation for future contracts and investment. Is this the moment Ukraine officially transitions from a nation seeking military aid to a security donor that exports high-tech combat expertise?
Well, yes, and not only it moves into the country that now shows how to the current defense type of war, new technology war is has to be handled. Ukraine moves from the country that in 2022 and 2023 was receiving type of aid that really right now not even relevant anymore. In 2023, when Ukraine received tanks and artillery shells and all kind of heavy and expensive equipment, that 4 years later is almost irrelevant on the battlefield. What is relevant that Ukraine developed new, cheap, and fast and in mass produced capabilities, and that became so obvious that it's so relative right now that no one in the world can ignore it anymore.
Now, reports indicate Ukraine is offering drone interceptor technology in exchange for Saudi Arabia's sophisticated air defense missiles. How does this technology swap change the traditional arms dealing dynamics in the Middle East?
Well, traditional arms, again, traditional is large and expensive. And even though Ukraine still needs missiles to intercept Russian ballistic, that's mostly for the Patriot systems. Ukraine developed with the sweat, blood, and under everyday threat of Shahed drones capabilities to withstand. But that means not only the cheap drone that can be produced at scale. It's also it's a full ecosystem. It's a radar system that can identify drones at a much lower altitudes. It's software. It's all kind of the strategically built defense line. So this type of, you can really swap, you can really exchange in a traditional way. This kind of, it's not only exchanging the equipment, it's exchanging know-how, it's exchanging knowledge. And that is most valuable knowledge that Ukrainians do have. And not only they use it on combat, they proved it working. So today, what we've seen and what I've seen going into the many conferences, defense conferences and military conferences in United States, that not only all type of army do not fully understand the new technological war, and they're still going into the big and expensive. They do not have an answer how to train people to use the drones, interception drones, reconnaissance drones. It's a whole ecosystem how you to train, and that becomes the most valuable what Ukraine can provide. We in Dignitas, we trained 170,000 people from 2023, and that was also a grassroots. We had a grassroots initiative where even Ukrainian government did not understand that type of need. The war moves and changes so fast that understanding how to adapt between 3 to 6 months technology change, sometimes 2 weeks, how you can fix that, how that drone would fly and not being jammed. That knowledge became the essential for today's technological war.
The troops. Ukrainian military experts are now on the ground in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, helping to counter the same Iranian-designed drones used in both Ukraine and the Gulf. Does this shared threat create a prominent military alliance between Kyiv and Riyadh that outlasts both current wars?
Well, we'll see. Everything is, as we say, the permanent is only a change. But as of today, it's definitely that Ukraine, that head of the world, is in understanding technological war. In the understanding how to build these capabilities fast. Ukraine grew in 2022. It had only 50 defense tech companies. Now it has 900. About 400,000 people in Ukraine, almost 500,000, went through training. So this is not a kind of small kind of an impact that Ukraine as a country make right now on their world security. Again, we've been talking that the war is changing. We asked American, European countries to pay attention to the field. Many European countries, especially Nordic countries, United Kingdom, they paid attention. They're going to be a lot of time benefiting from understanding, from know-how. The countries who did not pay attention how to protect their wealth, like a lot of Middle East countries, they have a lot of wealth. They have oil refineries, they have water supplies in the desert you have to protect. They kind of did not pay attention to that development in the world, or did not pay enough attention. Now they do have they have the financial means, they have funds, so they will be definitely buying this type of expertise now. They need to protect their countries, they need to protect their wealth. And it's not the only that Shahed or Iran developed this type of Shahed drones that became super relevant right now. Because Ukraine had this kind of attacks every single night, and from 100 to right now 800, about 800 drones. Now the new type of drone, Shahed, like a white drone. It used to be black for the night, now it's white drone, so they can also use it during the day. So it's also very fast changing. So to understand how to adapt to the changes, that most crucial, and definitely is going to be for many years right now that Ukraine would be leading that type of understanding, because again, you get this all have to be tested on the ground, and that Ukrainian soldier provide a lot of information to those who make the adjustments, those who produce. So it's long. Yes, I believe it's long. Will it be permanent and forever? It's hard to say.
Now, you touched upon managing resources in the Middle East. The two leaders discussed global fuel markets during the meeting. Is there a scenario where Ukraine's security cooperation influences Saudi oil policy, or are these two issues strictly separated?
It's not strictly separated because definitely oil plays a huge part in Russian capabilities to continue this war. So the less oil Russia has, the cheaper oil at the world market, the less Russia has the abilities or capabilities to continue this war. So it's definitely important conversation. And Saudi already showed many times that they can drop the price of oil quite, low and undermine Russia that way. So it's not fully separate conversations. It's definitely intervene. And again, it's very clear in Middle East that those production facilities, oil refineries, again, the transportation hubs has to be protected from the drone attacks, number one. The missile is only one way to attack. By far more efficient, by far cheaper way to attack is with drones. And if they have only missiles to defend, the war math doesn't work anymore. The missile costs $3 to $4 million. The Shahed drone costs between $20,000 and $50,000. So if you're using your missiles to shut down these cheap drones, that math is not going to work. So yes, a lot of things that has to be done, but oil price, it's intervene in this kind of discussion because you want Russia, not only you want to finish the war in the Gulf, but you need Russia to not have ability to do this war in any observable future.
Now, finally, Yulia, given Russia's deepening military reliance on Iran, how do we expect the Kremlin to react to Saudi Arabia, which is a key energy partner, signing a defense pact with Ukraine?
I expect that Russia will not do much about it. Russia understands only strength. So if Saudi show strength, they've been very kind of neutral in this war. They have not really condemned Russia or shut Russia from the fully. They could have done a lot more to support Ukraine. But this type of reality brings completely different, as we say, like President Zelensky has different cards right now on the table. So for Saudi, it would be great to show that they can learn how to defend, and that would be only strengthening their position in the world and in negotiations with Russia. Russia does understand only strength. The stronger any country they negotiate or they talk to, the more respect they would show to that country and to that leader.
Yulia, thank you very much for sharing your time and insights with us.
Thank you.
Now, that was Yulia O'Connell, member of Dignitas in New York, USA. After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Turkey says its troops have withdrawn from NATO's Iraq mission as deployments shift amid regional tensions. Ankara is also preparing a bigger role in the alliance ahead of leaders' summit. Our Istanbul correspondent Adamora has more.
A Turkish Defense Ministry spokesman has confirmed that Turkish military personnel participating in NATO's mission in Iraq have been successfully withdrawn from the country. The spokesman said that the move was carried out within NATO's broader withdrawal plan and noted that Turkey had also helped in the evacuation of personnel from other allied nations. Earlier this month, NATO personnel in Iraq were temporarily relocated due to deteriorating security conditions and mounting regional tensions. In a related development, the Defense Ministry has also announced that plans are currently underway to establish a NATO core headquarters in Turkey under the alliance's Southeast Regional Plan. The planned headquarters, which will be commanded by a Turkish general, is intended to support NATO's deterrence and defense capabilities in the region. Officials stressed, however, that the plan was approved before the current conflict and was not directly linked to recent developments. Turkey has been a NATO member since 1952 and fields the alliance's second-largest army after the United States. Ankara continues to play a frontline role in shoring up NATO's southeastern flank, particularly amid growing instability in the Middle East and Black Sea regions. Since the war between Iran, Israel, and the United States began 1 month ago, NATO air defenses in the eastern Mediterranean have intercepted 3 ballistic missiles heading towards Turkish airspace. The developments come as Turkey prepares to host a landmark NATO Leaders Summit later this year. According to officials, Ankara hopes to use the upcoming summit to reinforce alliance unity and highlight Turkey's strategic importance within NATO's regional security architecture. This is Adam Maro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
NATO has published its Secretary General's annual report for 2025, highlighting the strategic importance of the South Caucasus. The alliance says the region remains vital to its security, particularly amid the ongoing impact of Russia's war against Ukraine. It notes meaningful progress in peace efforts between Armenia and Azerbaijan during the past year. The report also acknowledges continued United States involvement in supporting the process. Georgia is looking to strengthen its role in a key Europe-Asia trade route as senior U.S. officials visit for economic talks. Our correspondent, Nini Nikolashvili, has more.
Georgia is seeking to strengthen its position in the Middle Corridor, a strategic trade route linking Europe and Asia, as senior U.S. officials visit the country for economic discussions. Economy Minister Mariam Kruishvili met with Peter Andrioli and Acting Ambassador Alan Purcell in Tbilisi, where the focus was on expanding cooperation in infrastructure, logistics and transit. Central to the discussions was the Anaklia Deep Sea Port, a long-delayed project seen as critical to increasing Georgia's competitiveness along the Middle Corridor. The government presented Anaklia alongside other large-scale projects, including railway modernization and a new international airport as part of a broader strategy to attract foreign investment and enhance connectivity. However, the Anaklia project also carries geopolitical weight. The tender was awarded to a consortium led by China Communications Construction Company, a move that has raised concerns in Washington about growing Chinese influence in Black Sea infrastructure, particularly given Russia's military presence in the region. U.S. engagement reflects both economic and strategic interests, with Washington looking to support alternative trade routes that reduce dependency on rival powers. At the same time, opposition figures question the government's narrative of improving U.S.-Georgia relations. George Butikashvili, a member of the opposition party Coalition for Changes, noted that the U.S. official met with economic ministers and visited port sites, but avoided meetings with top political leadership, suggesting a focus on projects rather than political endorsement. Despite this, both sides agree on one point. Georgia's geographic position makes it a crucial player in the region's economic future. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Armenia says access through Azerbaijan is key to expanding regional trade. Deputy Prime Minister Mger Grigorian highlighted the issue at a Eurasian intergovernmental meeting in Shymkent, Kazakhstan. He described the removal of transport barriers as a significant step for Armenia and the wider South Caucasus. According to Grigorian, improved transport and logistics links will help unlock the region's full economic potential. He added that the move is expected to drive growth in external trade and strengthen economic ties. Humanitarian aid is continuing to move into Iran through Azerbaijan's southern border, with both rail and road deliveries passing through Astara as regional tensions remain high. Our Leila Rahimli has more.
Well, we are here in Astara, right on Azerbaijan's southern border at the crossing point with Iran. The freight train from Russia carrying more than 300 tons of humanitarian aid has already passed through here and crossed into Iran. And what we are seeing now is a separate flow, trucks continuing to move aid across the border. Most of it's medical, medicines, hospital supplies, even field kits, that kind of support that can be used immediately. And this isn't the first shipment. Earlier in March, a much smaller delivery around 13 tons was sent along the same route. So the aid is coming in different ways, by rail and by road, and moving into Iran through this crossing point. And it also highlights Azerbaijan's role here as a key transit point for humanitarian deliveries.
Today, in accordance with the instructions of the President of the Russian Federation and on the instructions of the Minister of Emergency Situations, the second stage of the delivery of emergency humanitarian aid to the people of Iran was completed. This aid included 300 tons of various medications. As you know, another delivery was previously made by air to Lankaran airfield, subsequently transported to Iran. In total, the delivery of the cargo took almost 4 days, and this was made possible thanks to the efforts of various agencies in Russia and Azerbaijan. In this regard, I would like to thank all employees of the Russian ministries and agencies, as well as our Azerbaijani colleagues who facilitated the speedy delivery of this humanitarian aid.
All of this being coordinated at the state level, involving Russia, Azerbaijan and Iran. And this comes amid ongoing military escalation in the region. At the end of February, the US and Israel launched a joint operation targeting Iran. Since then, there have been retaliatory strikes, regional spillover, and rising tensions across the Middle East. So that's all for now. This is Leila Rahimli in Astara with Javid Aliyev behind the camera for A News.
Iran has rejected U.S. calls for negotiations, warning that continued strikes are deepening regional instability and undermining diplomatic efforts. Turaj Sherlilu brings us more.
I'm reporting from Enqilab Square in Iran's capital, Tehran. As the war became 4 weeks old, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's offer for negotiations in the middle of conflict, branding it a sign of contradiction in Washington's words and actions. He made this statement in a phone contact with his Turkish counterpart, Hakan Fidan, during which he called on regional countries and international community to condemn the Israel-US invasion of Iran. In a separate contact with Kazakh Foreign Minister Yermak Kosherbayev, Tehran's top diplomat said that air raids on Iranian northern port city of Bandar Anzali have seriously jeopardized the security and stability in the Caspian Sea basin. According to official news media, quoting foreign ministry statements, Araghchi also in a phone conversation with Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira urged countries of the region to prevent the United States and Israel from using their territory and facility to commit acts of aggression against Iran. Meantime, UN Security Council holds a meeting behind closed doors on Friday, New York local time, to discuss the US and Israeli attacks on Iran's civilian infrastructure, including the US bombing of a girls' primary school in southern city of Minab on the first day of war on 28th of February. The in-camera session convenes at the proposal of Russia, with participation of 15 permanent and non-permanent members of the Council, while the war entered its 28th day. Turaj Sherlilu, reporting from Tehran for A News.
A regional environmental meeting focusing on the Caspian Sea will take place in Astana from April 22nd to 24th. The gathering will host the first meeting of a joint working group studying the causes of the sea's declining water levels. The issue was discussed during talks between Kazakhstan's ambassador Alim Bayel and Azerbaijan's climate envoy Mokhtar Babayev. Participants are also set to address ecosystem protection, environmental cooperation and coordination on upcoming initiatives. Uzbekistan is advancing both energy security and environmental stability with new oil and gas projects on the Ustyurt Plateau, alongside expanded greening efforts under the Yeşil Makan program. Here's more on the story.
Uzbekistan is strengthening its energy sector through new international partnerships, as British company BP joins efforts to develop hydrocarbon resources on the Ustyurt Plateau. According to Uzbekneftgaz, work is underway to maximize output at existing fields while accelerating geological exploration. The government has also engaged major international firms such as Boston Consulting Group and Schlumberger to introduce advanced technologies into the sector. Projects on the Ustyurt Plateau are being implemented in cooperation with Azerbaijan's SOCAR and could attract up to $2 billion in investment. The site is estimated to hold up to 100 million tons of oil and 35 billion cubic meters of natural gas, with annual production expected to reach 5 million tons of oil. First extraction is projected within the next 3 to 5 years as infrastructure development continues. At the same time, Uzbekistan is scaling up its environmental agenda under the nationwide Yeşil Makan program. A new presidential decree sets a target to increase green coverage from 14.2% to 30% by 2030, while expanding green space per capita to 10 square meters. Air pollution levels, including PM2.5 and PM10 particles, are expected to decrease by 20 to 25%. And temperature in climate-affected regions could drop by up to 2 degrees Celsius. By 2028, at least 100 hectares of botanical and dendrological gardens will be created across the country. In addition, new mechanisms such as a green ticket system will allow individuals and businesses to offset carbon emissions, with strengths directed toward tree planting and maintenance. Officials claim the combined approach reflects broader strategy, expanding energy production to support economic growth, while simultaneously investing in environmental measures to mitigate its long-term impact. It is Cyril Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
After the break, we'll take a look at how Azerbaijan is championing connectivity in the region, from Armenia's new openness regarding transit to Baku's role in delivering aid to a war-torn Iran. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Armenia's Deputy Prime Minister, Imger Grigoryan, today stated that the lifting of transit restrictions through Azerbaijan is a noteworthy event for Yerevan's future. Meanwhile, Baku has stepped into a vital humanitarian role, ensuring that medicine and food reach the Iranian people as the regional war intensifies. To discuss the strategic and humanitarian impact of this, we're joined by Akbar Novruz, a geopolitical analyst in Baku, Azerbaijan. Thank you for joining us, Akbar.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Now, at today's meeting of the Eurasian Intergovernmental Council held in Kazakhstan, the Deputy Prime Minister of Armenia called the lifting of transit bans through Azerbaijan significant for Yerevan. Is this simply an economic necessity, or is it a calculated political signal that Armenia is ready to fully integrate into a new regional reality?
Well, to be honest, it's, in my humble opinion, it's actually genuinely both. And I think it's both declaration of economic necessity and a political signal. Given the fact that Armenia has been constrained by Azerbaijan and by the whole border, it has been a interconnected and the, how do you say, sandwich between all the countries that are actually bordering them. And its economy has been dependent via Georgia and Iran. Around 70 or 80% of trade routes has been dependent via Georgia. That actually puts Armenia in a vulnerable position and over independence by Georgia in terms of any sort of political dispute that would happen in Georgia could undermine and deter the economic construction of Armenia. On the political signal point, as you have mentioned, I would like to talk about the quote of the Mr. Grigoryan. He actually said and explicitly linked this move as a strengthening mutual trust and advancing on the peace agenda, which actually signals that it's more than a economic alternative or economic flexibility. They're actually making this a new default orientation for the Armenian public, considering that there's going to be parliamentary elections in Armenia this June. This is a necessity to give this political signal that normalization between Azerbaijan and Armenia is a must. So I think they're actually moving towards a peace, and they're trying to build a peaceful South Caucasus in the near future, hopefully.
Now, this is quite noteworthy because Azerbaijan has already shipped over 10,000 tons of fuel to Armenia this year. From a regional standpoint, how does this direct trade between former rivals change the power dynamic compared to the old indirect routes through Georgia?
Yes, as you've mentioned, I would say the numbers are quite striking, to be honest. And to put this in perspective, Armenia had been the geopolitical reason why this route actually means not, I mean, that geopolitical and of course the economic reason why this route is necessary for Armenia is because the old route via Georgia at the time cost and dependence, and I mean over dependence on Georgian transit fees. And given the fact that Georgian transfer fees are reported to be much higher than Azerbaijan transit fees, around 40 times higher than the comparable Azerbaijani rates. So this should be, and I would say this has already revived these discussions in Armenia regarding the restoration of direct rail connection between Azerbaijan and the Armenia. So in normal terms, let's say the human terms of this means a cheaper, faster supply chains to the Armenian people, and lower food and energy prices for ordinary people, I think, in my opinion, means much more than the other things in this day and age. So this actually puts a great necessity over the routes of Azerbaijan, and it doesn't mean that Armenia would actually reject the routes via Georgia, but it actually gives them a huge flexibility over the Georgian prices and rates.
Now, speaking about routes, as the Middle Corridor expands, Azerbaijan is being described as the indispensable hub of the Silk Road. How does including Armenian territory in this corridor benefit Baku's long-term goal of being a global transit leader?
Well, in 2025, if I'm not mistaken, in the 11 months of the 2025 year, Azerbaijan Railways handled around 350 block trains from China through Central Asia, which is if I'm not mistaken, around 40% increase from the 2024 numbers. So Armenian connection might be one of the missing link that actually completes this picture. For example, President Ilham Aliyev has previously said that this roads development could actually transform Armenia's regional role and turning this country into a transit country for the first time in its history of independence. So the operation of TRIP most definitely will benefit the Middle Corridor economically and strategically speaking, and this actually adds a great necessity for the TRIP corridor as well, the whole region as well. As we've seen, the US being interested in the region gives a great necessity as well. So, and removing the dependencies from Russia and Iran adds a huge significance for both countries. So it actually adds I would say, a link, a route of it's a manageable interdependency. This route actually manages the interdependencies between all the regional powers and countries in the region.
Now, since March 10th, Azerbaijan has dispatched multiple humanitarian convoys to Iran, totaling over 110 tons of food and medicine. In your opinion, why is Baku taking the lead on this aid mission while the regional war continues to escalate?
Well, of course, on March 5th, drones struck Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan exclave, unfortunately, hitting the airport, and of course, it actually hit the airport and fell near to school, injured civilians, and Azerbaijan on its side blamed Iran initially and recalled its diplomats and etc. We all know the situation, how it all happened. And of course, in March 10, as you mentioned, a call between President Aliyev and Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian, sharing their condolences. Pezeshkian, after sharing their condolences, saying that they will most definitely be investigating this issue further. Azerbaijan have sent its first convoy of humanitarian aid that includes medicine, food, and all sorts of humanitarian stuff. Then a week later, a second convoy went to Iran and include food, medicines, and other medical supplies as well, with the inclusion of Nowruz gifts as well. That actually adds a symbolic weight between the both nations that are actually celebrating this holiday. Now, on the other reality is the reasoning why this happened after all those tensions, I would say, is multi-layered and much more of a reality check for both countries, I would say, because Azerbaijan and Armenia shares around a 700-kilometer border between each other. So, and 20 million and more than 20 million of ethnic Azerbaijanis are living inside Iran. So any sort of humanitarian aid is actually helping that ethnicities as well, not only the Iranian people as a whole, that Azerbaijanis as well. So that actually adds a great symbolic importance. And another reality is that Nakhchivan's certain lifelines actually depend partly on Iranian transit routes. So it actually puts another necessity to TRIP corridor. So we have been talking about extensively throughout our interview that because Nakhchivan is actually dependent on the routes via Iran, Azerbaijan needs this route much more than any other nations. It actually needs for Armenia as well. Azerbaijan needs it for keeping Nakhchivan as close as it can, because any situation, as it currently ongoing in Iran, it's war right now. So it doesn't matter where they actually strike Nakhchivan or where they strike Azerbaijan. It actually puts a threat, a danger for Nakhchivan, and being over-dependent from Iran actually puts that exclave into a much bigger threat than anyone can actually think about.
Mr. Akbar Nowruz, thank you very much for sharing your time and insight with us.
Thank you so much as well.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.